The following program is an original production of WICC PBS Chicago.
There are currently more than 3.5 million teachers working in elementary and secondary schools in the United States. More than 75% of teachers are women, and nearly half are under age 40. What's it like to be a teacher today? We'll find out by talking to a group of outstanding instructors. That's coming up next on today's edition of The Professors. Joining us to talk about the profession of teaching are Eileen Quinn Knight, a professor of education at St. Xavier University; Donnell Rader, an assistant principal and instructor at a Chicago elementary school; Akbar Dima, a professor of political science at Chicago State University; and Bernadette Glover, an assistant principal and instructor at a Chicago elementary school. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to start with a quote about teaching. John Steinbeck said that I have come to believe that a great teacher is a great artist, and that there are as few as there are of any other great artists in the world. Teaching might even be the greatest of arts, since the medium is the human mind and the spirit. So today's conversation is about great teaching. What do you all think makes a great teacher? Now, everyone's being so humble here now. It's like, oh, I would never know, not me. Okay, obviously you guys are here because you guys are effective teachers, so take off the humility. Let's talk. Okay. Go ahead.
I think in order to teach, you must first be a good learner, because learning is a process by which you teach. So I think, to me, you cannot be a good teacher unless you are a good learner. And teaching entails lifelong learning. So I will stop here and proceed as you may allow me.
Okay.
I think that the thing about good teaching is developing good relationships with our students. And I think the biggest joy I've gotten out of teaching is the relationships I've established with my students and keep up today. That I have 6 superintendents and so many principals and so many teachers out there that are now in the society making a difference. So our students and the relationships we establish with them are certainly the most important thing I think that happens.
So thank you. Both of you are here because both of you are former classroom teachers who are now moving into leadership roles in your schools as assistant principals and soon-to-be principals. And so this is the stuff that you do every single day. What is it that separates a good teacher from a poor teacher?
Well, I think about in the teaching field that any person who endeavors the journey into teaching, into education, would be classified as a good teacher.
Interesting.
Now, I do believe that somewhere along the line things happen, things change, but for someone to take on the opportunity to become a teacher, to become an influence, to make that connection and change the life of a child, those are the important characteristics.
Okay. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I agree with what everyone said, actually. You know, when I think of teachers who've impacted my life, I think about the teachers who took the time out to build that relationship with me and actually get into my life and see what's going on. And it's more than just the academics. It's the socio-emotional piece that's just as important.
Awesome. There was a survey that was done of 3,000 high school students recently, and they said the following things about what makes a good teacher, because I do think that because they sit and listen to the teachers, we ought to listen to their opinions about this. And they said that a good teacher explains things well, and they make the subject interesting. They said a good teacher is funny and has a lot of personality, which is interesting because I asked my students before I came here today, I wanted to get their opinion on this, and they said the same thing. They want a teacher that is entertaining somewhat to make learning fun. They also said that a teacher is helpful with things even outside of classwork. So they want someone, and I found the same thing with my college students, they want someone who's able to give them life advice or give them career guidance, that sort of thing. For all of you, you guys went into the teaching profession because you're passionate about education. What teachers made a difference in your lives? Share a story with me about an experience you've had with a great teacher that really impacted you.
I went to school with Dominican nuns in Florida, and they were wonderful. They all had received their PhDs, and were waiting for university assignments. And they did the most creative things with us. We were in plays, we wrote books, we discussed our own curriculum. So it was just a wonderful time that I knew from that I wanted to be a teacher, because they were just so impassioned and creative and enlivened in my own life and in the life of the students that they really impacted.
Okay. Anyone else?
So I know that I've had wonderful teachers in my journey, but when I think about it, I think about the reverse of this, and I think about a young lady who I had the opportunity to meet along the way, Kawana, and not just Kawana, but other young ladies who I know that I was that creative, I was that fun, I was that caretaker for her life, very concerned about her grades, about who she was becoming as a young lady, and just following along. And I met her some time ago, and I'm very proud to say today that she's about to graduate from college, just having that mentor, that connection. And I think that that is what makes a good teacher, whether you are the good teacher or that person is influencing your life, just having that connection and that truly, that connection to just truly know the individual as a person.
Interesting, interesting.
Yeah, I think I agree with many of the things that are revealed in that survey, except one thing, which is that you have to be funny, you have to be comical. I don't think that is truly what should be expected, but a good teacher should care about his or her students and make sure that they succeed in the courses they are taking and follow them. The other thing I should point out is that we are in our own ways all teachers. Those of us sitting here have taken teaching as a vocation, but otherwise everybody is a teacher. If you are a parent, you are a teacher. For 18 years you have to teach and guide your young person. So whether you are on the street and you are teaching somebody directions, these days we don't do much of that. But it depends on the extent to which you take your role as seriously as you should.
Yeah.
To me, I have been through many generations of students. I may not look that way, but it is true.
I wouldn't give you over 25. Okay.
But therefore, I have seen those who struggle, and very soon they say, I'm in law school and I'm practicing law. And they write to me and they say, oh, you did this and that, and it has hurt me immensely. The joy of teaching for me is derived from the letters I get from the students. I am not in for pecuniary reasons per se, although that is absolutely important, but I derive so much joy.
And I'm not offended by the word fun. I think that's an okay
He's
word.
making us laugh the entire time.
I know. And I think maybe we should use the word joy, because I think every class I go into, every single day is different, and I bring a lot of joy to my students and humor, and I say to them, I teach math methods. So I say to them, every 15 minutes we're going to laugh no matter what. So because it's not a class that normally people love to be in.
Absolutely.
So I think the joy is an important thing.
I think so as well. I think it's very important that you mentioned that. You know, the word entertain means to keep people's attention.
Right.
And when you entertain, I used to be offended by that concept as well, and so I've realized what it meant to entertain a student. I remember having a professor in graduate school that taught statistics. And I hated statistics, and the class, the material was very difficult. But he was literally the funniest professor I'd ever had in my life. And not that, once again, everyone has to be a comedian, but by doing that, he made a connection with us, and it made the material more accessible for us.
Right.
And I remember wanting to go to statistics class, which I thought was, you know, quite ironic if you think about it. So.
And I taught statistics at the police academy, and I said to them, you all have guns, so you know you're going to do well in this class.
Sure.
You know, I mean, you have to, you know, lighten it up and make it something that is pleasing to both of us. I have a right to have joy in my life too, so I want to make sure that I have a good time when I'm teaching, as well as the students are having a good time.
I think it goes back to making that engagement.
That's right.
Just engaging the learner.
That right there is I think that's the largest piece to a teacher's job, to truly being able to engage the whole class, because you have so many different individuals in front of you, so many diverse learners, and to be able to connect with each and every student, you know, you may have to tell a few jokes, and you may have to tap into a previous conversation that you had with a student just to make that connection.
Yeah.
When I go into a classroom and I observe my teacher's instruction, that's the biggest thing I look for, you know, engagement. Are the students engaged? What are they doing right now?
Right.
Is the kid looking at the wall? Is he bored? Are they raising their hand? Are they engaged in the conversation that's taking place?
Yeah.
That's what I look for.
You know, it's interesting. I want to shift the conversation a little bit because I'd like to talk about teaching as a whole, internationally and nationally, and sort of the move around teaching. So we all know that teaching currently in the United States is really, the movement is around accountability and testing. And we also know that teachers don't necessarily make as much money as we'd like them to. So the highest paid teachers are in places like Singapore. The United States is not far off on that list, but what I've found is that United States teachers actually teach more hours than most countries in the world. So their pay is not necessarily connected to that. So I found that to be very interesting. So the culture of teaching, are we in a culture that respects and values good teaching, or is is the current culture something that is really antithetical to someone feeling great about spending a career in life in the classroom with students?
I don't think people understand what teachers do, and I really think we were just saying before the show that after we finish here, we probably have about 12 hours of work before we start our next day. So the amount of things that we do behind the screen is really astronomical, and that's the issue that people don't realize. That I taught your child to read or to do math or whatever else it is important, but besides that, it's the whole big what is it in the community that forces us to be engaged that much?
I want to come to Dr. Demon, but I think that's so funny you talk about that 12 hours of work outside of class. I teach adults, so when I always tell them I have 12 hours of work to do outside of class, they go, "Oh, Professor, no, we want you to rest. Don't worry about all those assignments, go take a vacation," that sort of thing. And I just find that to be funny because the more that you care, the more you do all of that work outside of the class to make sure they get it. You were going to say something a moment ago.
Yeah, I was going to say the thing about being funny in the classroom is the requirement of it, not the actual participation in fun and being comical. I could probably pass as a stand-up comic in Chicago. My students tell me, but when you require me to come and wake you from slumber, I said no.
Yeah, I understand that.
But I think the point she made is very important. I teach 2 days a week. So some people say, what do you do the other days? And the other days I have to do a lot of work in order to stand there and teach. We have to write, we have to participate in community activities such as I'm sitting down here and doing. We have to participate in service for the governors of the university. So all of these, a lot of people do not see.
Absolutely.
But for the work that teachers do, I think they are not well paid. What used to be the case is that you are paid a little sum of money and you stay in this job and you have job security. If you stay long enough, you can get a decent retirement. But as you have seen lately, the idea of tenure is being challenged.
Absolutely.
And the role of teachers is being challenged as a result as well.
You know what I found to be interesting? In Japan, they do not fire bad teachers. They retrain poor teachers. To your point, Bernadette, you said, hey, someone who wants to teach, most people are not going into the classroom just to get a paycheck. We know that people who are passionate about educating kids end up in these situations and they burn out for a variety of reasons. And I'd love to hear what you guys think about that, because I'm sure you see it, what causes a teacher to burn out. But I do think that that's a very important point, that if there is not a commitment to them, then they may not make the necessary commitment to the career. What do you guys see as reasons why teachers fail in the classroom or burn out or don't have the kind of success that they'd like to have?
So one of the things it comes to my mind is limited resources. In order to create, design the learning for the child, each individual learner is different. So there's a big push towards small group instruction. So you have whole group, you have small group, you have individual group. Sometimes there's just one teacher, sometimes you have a teacher assistant, but just that, having the resources for programs, additional support and programs for children who, receive a late start to their learning. So I think it gets to be overwhelming sometimes. Teachers get tired, the additional 12 hours they have to do, then the different other mandates that, that are upon them. But even so, I think that the joy of the profession continuously brings them back.
Sure.
Yeah, I agree. In addition to that, I would say, and you just mentioned training. That teacher training piece is so important, just having that support. Teachers need time to reflect on their craft, to build upon it. You talk about being overwhelmed and burnt out. Just like we discussed backstage, my school day, my students are dismissed at 3:45 every day. I joke about it, but that's when my work day actually begins.
Yes,
absolutely.
Right.
That's
so
when it begins.
You mean you don't try to run out before them? You don't try to beat them?
Sometimes I wish I could, But just the planning, a great teacher is a great planner. I anticipate everything before it happens. You talk about lesson plans and what you plan to do if this happens, and just being totally prepared for whatever comes your way in that classroom, because you're not dealing with robots, you're dealing with human beings.
Sure.
Right. I was just in a CPS school yesterday, and there was a student that was a Golden Apple. I work for the Golden Apple Foundation, and he was teaching parabolas and used Angry Birds. Okay. And I thought that was such a good way to get the point across to the students. And I think those are the kind of things I see good teachers do, just as you said. Absolutely. The planning is so important. And he did an awful, wonderful job of planning that lesson and making sure every single kid in that class understood what he was doing.
Another example of meeting children where they are.
Right.
Yeah. And I found, it's interesting because I found both planning to be important, but also the ability to improvise as well.
Yes.
And
flexibility.
to understand the ebb and flow of an educational environment. And to understand that when you are, say, in a situation where you have one plan, but the students begin to engage in a way differently than you expected, so you begin to move the plan, flexibility is extremely important.
So that's also one of the factors that we both observe for when we enter in classrooms, observing teachers. Flexibility. Yep. Are there opportunities to stop where you are to teach something else, or if it's not going a certain direction or a certain way, what do you do? So you have to be flexible. Granted, planning is number one because you have to have some kind of end goal in mind. But outside of that, if it's not going that way, what do you do as a teacher?
Interesting.
That's the importance of learning, of knowing your craft, your content area, whatever it is that you're teaching. If they're not getting what you're trying to present here, you have to take some steps back. And that's where the training comes into play, learning how to do that effectively. It's
funny, as I'm listening to you guys speak, I'm saying, man, someone's probably watching this show now who said, I'd like to be a teacher, and then they look at this and, oh my gosh, there's no way I want to do all that. That's just...
You know what, and you would think that because a teacher's job is so complex now.
Sure, it is.
Much more complex than it was yesterday, But when you step into the classroom and you see those faces and they depend on you, and you begin to build those relationships, and if you're not passionate about education and providing quality instruction to students, you might not last. If it's just for the money, you won't last.
Right. It's a sense in your own being that this is truly your vocation. This is what God called you to do. Even myself, my son is a professor at UIC, and he and I created a course called Sociology and Anthropology of Education. And the joy I had just planning that with him, yes, it's part of that 12 hours, but it was something we just so much enjoyed doing. And we presented it to other groups, and we got to present it in Europe, and we, did a lot of things with it. So that's the joy that you
made me so guilty now. Because my mother's been trying to do something like that with me for a long time. And I said, Mom, I can't sit and plan a course with you. And she's going to watch the show.
Oh,
and
sorry.
She's going to say, honey, now we,
Yes,
so
do it.
Thanks a lot, Eileen.
Sorry. But I'm not sorry, because it was a good experience. It was a great experience to have that kind of interaction with your own child. It's just amazing to think about. So your mother would enjoy doing it with you, I'm sure.
Yeah, the students often ask which professions they will get in order to get a good pay. And I said, what are you going to do with the pay? Then they say, we want to live comfortably and pay our bills. And I recognize that these days the cost of going to college is so astronomical, they have to do that. So they say, how much did you make when you start teaching? I said, $24,000.
Wow.
And they say, and you had a terminal degree? I said, yes. And then they said, and you took the job? I said, yes. And I've been in the profession ever since.
Yes.
Yeah.
But when you look at the monetary aspect of it and what you could do outside of teaching, this is a no-brainer.
Yeah.
But I take much joy and inspiration in the work of people who have done it, especially in the high schools and elementary schools. You see it as depicted in the movie Stand and Deliver. Did you watch that movie or you were too young?
Sure. Well, I was too young. I mean, you know,
But anyway, you look at that and you say, my goodness, there is so much you can do at each level.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right,
You know,
and those are the people I meet. Those are the
Yes.
people I see all day. I don't see, you know, the outliers that everybody talks about. And those are a small number of people that don't enjoy teaching anymore. And unfortunately, as you say, they haven't been reprogrammed for something else. New Jersey had a program at one point in which they took teachers that were burnt out and designed or helped reprogram them for different positions. So if they didn't want grade school, they helped them to get a high school position, or they got a administrative position, or something that wasn't more in tune with what they wanted to do.
You know what I find to be challenging as well? That in our culture, the teaching profession is probably not very much respected, if you would imagine. I mean, would you guys agree with that statement?
I can agree with that.
Okay. And if you disagree, that's
For
fine.
the last
too.
30 years, though, I mean.
I never wanted to be a teacher, to be
Sure,
honest.
sure.
I love children.
What did you want
always.
to do, Bernadette?
Something with communication,
Okay,
something
okay.
talking, not really sure.
Okay.
And I remember the day, in my freshman year of college, we had to take a seminar class, and part of that was doing observation hours, volunteer hours. So I didn't have a car. So there's school 2 blocks down the street. Oh, I'll go down there. And I absolutely fell in love.
Interesting.
And it was at that moment that I called my mom and I said, I'm going to be a teacher.
Yeah.
And she said, you're going to be a what? So, I've never looked back, and I would never change it.
Yeah. There was a poll that was done. I love these polls for these conversations. 91% of Americans believe that teachers are not respected. And that's a pretty significant thing. Now, if you look at Japan, we just talked about, students, they walk into class, they bow to their teachers. At lunchtime, they actually serve their teachers food.
Right, right.
And there's a different culture. In many places around the world, teaching is not the thing that your parent would look at and say, oh, why are you doing that? It actually would be something that your parents would look at and say, that's an awesome thing to do. There have been international surveys that have been done around that. In China, South Korea, Turkey, and Egypt, they're the most likely to give encouragement for teaching. In Portugal, Brazil, Japan, they're the least likely. Actually, which is interesting because we just talked about the Japanese. The UK scored in the middle on this survey around who's encouraging people to go into teaching. Why is it that your mother had that result, that response, and why would other people have that response in this culture? Because it's not uncommon.
It's an anthropological problem because our communities are such that don't support what is happening in the schools, and we need to do that.
Yes.
We have, as teachers, taken on more and more of the responsibility of the
Yes,
parent,
very
and
important
therefore we've come up with this really awesome burden that we have of taking on too many responsibilities. We need to give some of those back to the parent and pay attention to the ones that we say we can do and do well.
Yeah, because teachers are psychologists and their parents and their
Nurses.
uncles and nurses and
Yeah.
Counselors. Yes.
And
at the
nutritional
college
experts.
level too, by the way,
Yeah.
not just at the
Absolutely.
elementary
Yeah,
level.
that is true.
We deal with all that kind of stuff. You know,
Right.
yeah, go ahead.
It's funny, I was always told when I was in elementary school, you know, you guys better enjoy this, you better suck it up, you know, this nurturing that you're getting at this level, because when you get to high school, they're going to kick you to the curb. When when you make it to college, it's going to be even more, rigorous,
Yeah.
you know. But when I went to high school, I feel like I got more nurturing, from my teachers, and athletic coaches and, you know, people who actually took an interest in me.
Right, and at the graduate level, we do the same thing.
Absolutely.
Because people have very sophisticated, complicated lives.
Right.
And so we need to nurture them and to help them to get where they need to go. So when I see my students, I think, how can I make them successful? How can they make sure that they get my job when I'm
Now, Eileen,
doing something
you know,
else?
that just sounds so anti-capitalist, anti-competition, anti-American. You know, you're coddling these people. I think that's a very important point. And I think especially given the culture of testing and the culture of sort of pass-fail of students and teachers, we need to hear more things like that because people need help and they need to be developed. And if you do not develop them, then that's a big problem.
Yeah.
You know, teaching assessments and mandates are going to be there. Can't change that. Right now, I think in the teaching profession, we're still, just that human connection is there. And that's what we have to do. We have to connect. We have to connect to teachers. We have to connect to children. We have to bring parents in it. And everything else will fall into place.
Right, and those standards should be background music. And the real joy of teaching is connecting with that individual and seeing the child's eyes grow to be these, you know, huge saucers because he or she has finally gotten it. Even at the graduate level, you see somebody get it after they've rewritten the paper 3 or 4 times, and you just go, oh my gosh, this is wonderful. This is exactly what we wanted.
Okay.
Yeah.
But this emphasis on teaching and testing is taken away. Maybe
You know,
that
I
is
was
a
holding
taboo.
that, Dr. Demon. We're
No,
going to
it's
save
coming.
that for later. We'll do that on the after show. I'm serious because I was going to ask you. I was going to jump on that, and I said no. So we're going to hold off on that one. But here's what I want to do. We've got about a minute left in the show. And I just want quickly, in 2 to 3 words, if you got people watching now and they are thinking about being teachers, what would you say to them? Donnell.
Let's go, please. We need more.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
Bernadette.
It can be the joy of your life.
Okay.
And it is the type of job that will get you in heaven.
Okay.
Again,
yes,
be
Eileen,
passionate and joyful and focused and make sure it's your vocation.
Okay.
I said do it because posterity depends on it.
Awesome. That is a wonderful, wonderful way to end the show. Thank you all very much for
Thank you.
joining us today.
Thank you.
That's our show for today. The conversation continues online at wycc.org. We'll see you next time on The Professors.